Peter, we're back.
Good morning, sir. How are you on this fine Monday?
Monday. It is a fine Monday.
It is. It's nice outside. Well, let's grade on a curve. It's nice outside.
It feels like it's 80.
Yeah.
And it's all of 45.
It is.
And I'll take it.
Yeah. No, we're definitely
Snow's
grading on
melting.
a curve.
Sun's up a little sliver of sun as I walked in around 6 today. I'll take it, man.
Do you know super glue does not work when it's under like 40 degrees? Just a little tidbit.
Super glue doesn't work under 40 degrees. What happened?
Kind of hit the side of my garage with my car pulling in. And
Uh-oh, you've gone Sosnoff. Isn't this a classic?
yeah, and I made the rookie mistake too of rather than just stopping, getting out and looking at it, I was like, okay, I'm just going to turn the wheels and back away from it, which actually made it worse.
Uh-oh, okay.
So all in all, it was not great, but this piece of the fender flare pulled off, and I don't know if it's missing a clip or whatever. I have no clue, but it's just this little piece that if you glue it together, it holds like the front wraparound part against the car like it should
Okay.
be. And I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, this is not going to be great. When I go in
Here we go.
to get it really fixed, and they soak me for $1,000, they're going to be like, who glued this? So I don't know.
Yeah.
But so mixed up the glue, did everything yesterday and clamped it and everything. It's 5 minutes super glue. I waited half an hour and I take the clamp off and I'm like, okay. Walk out this morning, the thing's about an inch away from the side of the car. So
Gotcha.
super glue did not work, but it's still tacky, which is really weird. So I either have to figure out different
Do
glue.
you think would it have worked if you had like brought like a heater out there or something? And like
think-
left the heater on it?
I think if I put it in, super glue's so weird because the things it chooses to work on
Yeah, I have no clue.
are very few and far between.
Weird technology.
I mean, the thing it consistently works on is gluing your fingers together if you're not careful.
Always on your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like fiberglass and plastic, so it should work, but it is not. So
It's above my pay grade.
Yeah, I know.
I once tried to glue an Arc'teryx jacket back to. Well, actually, I should say my my accountant slash seamstress slash first and foremost mother, and it was actually her birthday last week.
Oh, is
so
that
happy
nice,
birthday.
Fran?
Yeah.
Hello, happy birthday.
But I had this. You are an Arc'teryx guy.
Yeah.
Not thankfully, actually, it's been a net negative on my life because it's so expensive. I'm now an Arc'teryx guy because you're an Arc'teryx guy, and so I had this beta jacket, like the shell, which is really nice. Like it's great for like doing outdoors stuff. You could put something under it if you don't have it, but it's got great pockets, good for hiking. All these
it's all
different
meant to be layered.
yeah, really nice, and it's all of $800 jacket.
Right.
Whatever.
But
Which
I've
makes
got
me
a
so
jacket-
mad to even say that.
I know, but I got one of those beta AR jackets that I bought when my son was, and this is funny, 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He's now 32. I still have it. Now, I ended up buying a new one a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes, Dad, can I borrow your Arc'teryx jacket? And I said, of course.
The old one?
Figuring he'd take the old one.
Yeah.
No, he takes the new one and leaves me with the old one. So that's something
That's
we need
nice
to,
of him. Well, he didn't want
Yes,
to. He didn't.
we need to sort through
He
that.
knew
Ed.
that you had like a special place for that old one. He didn't want.
but it holds up really well. Am I not right?
Okay, it holds up really well unless you throw it through the wash and then through the dryer. I don't know.
Dryer's no good.
Yeah, I think it was maybe something I did to it in the washing process, and then of course afterwards I like do research online, and they're very much like, we wash it like we're supposed to do the washing, like you don't wash it because like the special wicking waterproof stuff comes off of it.
Really?
And so you could actually set appointments with Arc'teryx with like a local store.
Yeah, there's
They'll
one
wash
right
your
down
stuff.
on Oak Street now.
And guess what? There's one
By your
of course,
Albert People's Glasses store.
well,
you could do a bougie.
There's one in Wicker,
bougie
actually.
afternoon.
There's one literally 3 blocks away from me, and I'm like, of course, I ruin this jacket. So, anyways, I put it through there, and it strips all the stuff. I ruin it, and then I ask my mom, who's handy with these things, because I'm not handy with these things. I'm like, is there something, like I bought some like stuff on Amazon that like you're supposed to be able to like put this material on the jacket and it like fix it up. And then she does it, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. And then, of course, months later, it starts to come undone a little bit. And then they're like running some promotion of like, oh, we'll wash your jacket and fix it up and whatever. I bring it in there. They look at it for 10 seconds and they're like, oh, you tried to fix this. And so we won't touch it. And I'm just like seriously, I have this jacket. I have a different Arc'teryx jacket, the bigger one, which it sucks. I love.
Yeah,
but that's a $1,200 jacket.
That's like a mobile home, though.
And
you can go out and live in that, and it's 0 degrees.
It's great. But I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, you're into me for $2,000 and you won't fix this freaking jacket.
Well, if you won't follow
but I
the
tried
rules,
to fix it, and so yeah. But with Tesla, I mean, Elon's going to tell you the same thing. He's going to say, you put super glue on my car. I'm not fixing this thing.
Trust me, this is the last Tesla I'm ever going to have. So if I can make this look good enough to get rid of it, I'm good. So
you should post it on Craigslist and just hope the super glue stays.
You know, you can only get it fixed at certain places because he won't sell the usual like body shops the parts for body work for the car. And because I was talking to my insurance agent, I said the insurance. So well, he goes into this whole thing about Elon and whatever. Well, he's got my son got hit, and he has a Tesla. Somebody in a Jewel parking lot backed into his car.
Happens.
And then drove away and parked like 3 spaces down. But the car's kind of cool. It's got the Sentry system, so he's got videotape of the guy backing into him,
geez.
the license plate and everything. So the guy ended up paying for it. But he comes back, he says, Dad, I got 3 estimates. And it was for like the back quarter. And he says, one was $6,000, one was $7,800. I said, they're ripping you off. That's insane. But it's not. It's what the expense of getting
the price is the price when you own the whole thing.
In this case, this guy's lucky he's not going to jail for doing such a dirtbag
in a
thing.
situation like this, the guy's paying for all of it.
Yes.
So, like, what does Ian care?
Well, that's what he was like.
Yeah.
He says, Dad, honestly, it's 3 blocks away. I don't care. I'm not paying for it.
Yeah.
I go, okay.
God. Well, that's good to know. I'm not going to, if I'm going to hit and run anyone in a Jewel parking lot.
Not a Tesla.
Not a Tesla.
Not a Tesla.
Okay.
Stay away from the Teslas because they'll get you.
I don't think I've ever done that. I've hit plenty of cars, but it's usually in such a bombastic way that they catch me.
No, it's usually, did you hit the guy when you did the 4-way power turn?
Yeah.
The Chicago drift.
If you've ever been to Chicago in Wicker Park, which is now, it's cool. It used to be. Now I sound like a jerk. It used to be cooler. Now there's like there's Arc'teryx stores and Targets and everything. It's still cool. I really like living there. It's fantastic. There's a big intersection.
You can't go out and kill and capture your own possum meat anymore.
You used to be able to kill your own possum.
Yeah,
and you can't kill your own
tragic.
possum anymore. But there's an intersection. It's kind of known for this intersection.
No, it's not known for this.
It's called five corners or 6 corners. I don't know how many corners. 5? John's, I think, trying to tell me. But it's Damon is going one way, which is a pretty classic Chicago street. It runs all the way down to the United Center. It goes pretty far north. There's North Avenue, which is also like a pretty classic street. It goes all the way to the lake. There's a lot of stuff on North Avenue on the north side. And then Milwaukee, which is a diagonal street, which is also pretty classic, with kind of like Lincoln Avenue. It runs diagonal. You could take it all the way into the north side. You could take it all the way. I had to go out last night. Callie made me go to this game night with her friends. They live so far. I was like, "Are we in Wisconsin?" But we were still on Lincoln Avenue. It was just like 7 or 8 miles.
You're
up
becoming
Lincoln
everything
Avenue
you detest.
to go play these games with these people, and they're chugging like wine and all this stuff. And I'm like, I gotta get up at 4:30 in the morning.
What were you guys doing?
And it was actually it was this game called Age of War. It was a nice game. But anyways, it's this huge intersection.
Right.
And it's like a 6-way, all these different traffic lights. And it's like 2 in the morning, and I'm dropping some friend off who lived there.
Key fact that he's going to gloss over, but 2 in the morning. Keep going.
Well, so between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., no rules apply. You don't have to stop at stoplights or stop signs.
That's written into the city rules.
Pretty
Right.
much.
Yeah.
I remember when I played hockey as a kid, Mr. Fetzer, who you don't think is real, Danny Fetzer's dad, drove us to hockey one day, and it was like an early tournament in like Wisconsin or Detroit or something like that. And it's like literally 4:30 in the morning. And Danny had forgot something at home, and so we had gone like 20 minutes, and we had to go back. And so Mr. Fetzer's pissed, and he's like literally
Mr. Molnett would have been
blowing
pissed.
through every stop sign, and I'm just like, and he's like, Frank, it's okay, like, it's before 5 in the morning. Like, you don't have to stop at these stop signs. And so since then, yeah, no rules between 2 and 6. So I go into this intersection. I drop my friend off, and then I'm like, oh, I live in the other direction. I don't want to have to like pull through this intersection, go turn around, and then go through the intersection again.
That's so public.
And
I mean,
so
that's what public people do.
And so I take a look around, and I just make a U-turn right in the middle of the huge intersection, and of course someone hits me immediately.
Oh, here he comes.
But thankfully, well, not thankfully, I shouldn't say
Thankfully, they had invented duct tape.
he was like stoned or drunk or something, and I kind of convinced him it was his fault, and we just kind of went our separate ways. I was like, well, you should have seen me. You shouldn't have done that. And then I think he was kind of freaked because I think maybe he was drinking or doing something, and I was like, I'm gonna get out of here, and then that was it. So I didn't actually get in trouble for that one.
Well, no, but you did have to wrap your bumper in duct tape.
Yeah, the car didn't work very well. That was when it was like, all right, Frank doesn't need a car, and I don't want a car. And parking, I'm sure your son lives in a building, so he's probably got parking, whatever, although I'm sure it's expensive. The parking, the car,
No, and
all this.
They break into the car.
They break in all the time. It's like it's the worst thing.
He's like, I get into his car after he came out of put some gas in and stuff. And I'm like, dude, the radio just clicks and chirps. It's like completely. He says, Dad, don't even bother. He says, if I put a new one in, they're just going to steal it the next day.
And I figure I'm paying $1 million every year to live in the like close to the office, and so I was like, I'll go without the car. No car.
No car.
So, anyways, well, I'm sorry about your car, but that sucks, my friend.
Not that sorry, I can say. Trust me, I've got phase 2. I've already got my wife turning on the heater in the garage, so it'll be room temperature. I will re-glue this
You're
afternoon.
going to do it again? Oh, you're going to do it again.
Re-glue this afternoon.
Perfect. That'll be great. That'll be a lot of fun. Well, I'm glad you're taking advantage of the good weather. Let's take a look at markets because Euro and a bunch of these markets giveth and then
so we had an
taketh
election over
away.
the weekend
Okay.
in Germany. Saw a little bit bounce on the opening from that. The center-right, I got to get this right, the center-left government has been running Germany for quite some time. Center-right government won with support from the further right party. It was thought of as a good outcome. Euro bought, and it's funny, open kind of quiet, up a little bit, but remember, we had sold off everything Friday with the sell-off in equities.
You can see this. Here's the move Friday. I'm looking at the 15-minute chart, and here's the open. Open higher.
Bonds, which are German treasuries,
pips.
higher. DAX, which is the German S&P, higher. All of it's come off, including the currency. Now we're right back to kind of the lows here. So that that's almost a 60, 70 pip fall off right here, going into the. So it's interesting. We clear well above 105. Well, I say well above 25 pips. It's
good move.
You got to, it's hard to say. Okay, when does it really clear it? Is it 2 ticks above or below? No, but you've got to kind of say and this was the case where if you were fading 105s.
Felt probably uncomfortable.
You probably covered them. If you stuck with them, God bless you, you still got them. But for me, 25 points through that level, 25 pips, you got to pick some place as to, okay,
it would have probably been around there.
Yeah, I would have probably.
Because this is a pretty, so.
If I wasn't sleeping, I would have been out.
So here you have Sunday night in the U.S. as the Asian markets are opening. Because to your point, I'm guessing that this election happened throughout the weekend. Yeah. And so they open higher.
Saturday, I believe, election, Sunday results.
So you open higher on this move, but they're back to unchanged around 104.5 by the time Asia kicks in. And then Euro takes off for 105.20.
Much more so than Aussie, than Canada, and yen actually gets sold.
Was the biggest move. When I checked in last night before going to sleep, I was like, wow, Euro dollar's up 40, 50, 60 points. Pound was up a good amount. And then checking in this morning, they gave it all back, and they're actually right now, as we speak, flirting with going red on the session here to start the week. Pretty crazy move. I mean, that's a nice range of 50, 60 points all the way up, and then coming back. I mean, when you talk about, and we talked about it a little bit last week, we'll be talking about it more and more, and we have to actually get into a segment in just a second. When you talk about the expected move in a market, and you talk about two-way action, day trading, scalping, whatever you want to call this, We tend to use standard deviations and expected moves. Standard deviations, we usually use looking at historical price data. Expected moves, you're using usually implied data from the options market. Either way, they end up being pretty freaking efficient, as you could imagine. The people pricing options, guess what? They're looking at the historical volatility and everything else. And we looked at it last week around a handful of markets, and I believe the Euro-dollar daily standard deviation recently, the last 30 days or so, has been around 40 to 50 points. And so when you talk about a rally from 104.60 up to 105.20, you get right outside the standard deviation, and then they come back. Does it always come back? Absolutely not. Two, does it come all the way back every time? Absolutely not. In fact, I mean, you and I have made a career out of talking about these markets going outside the standard deviation and maybe coming back a quarter of a standard deviation, a half of a, especially if you're scalping.
For scalping,
yeah. You want to sell in a scenario like this. If you're going against the trend, you want to sell the 105s or the 105.10s or the 20s and take them back to 104.90 or 104.80. But for them to come all the way back to 104.60, that's a pretty big reversion here to start the week.
Yeah, but that gives you, again, you cover at 104.80, you get a bounce back into the 105 level again, you can reload the shorts.
Yeah.
You trade the extension to the downside, which has to take you 104.20, which coincidentally, 104 even to 20 is another interesting value area.
Yeah.
You got all kind of trade setups today.
U.S. session hasn't even kicked in
Yeah,
yet.
and you've got all kinds of stuff to do. Dollar yen was having none of it.
Well, and actually, we're going to do. I'm surprised to see the dollar actually gaining some ground back on this yen. As we see last week, we got all the way down to 149, and that actually is going to bring in.
That was Friday, a little safe haven poking its head out of selling dollar yen.
Oh, we're going to talk about all of it.
Okay.
Japanese yen is taking off, Pete. Huge run
Just
up.
like your car in that 5-way intersection.
Huge
that crazy
move.
man came out of nowhere.
Huge move higher in the Japanese yen over the course of the last, at this point, few weeks. We'll look at all the data.
Right.
But dollar yen back under 150. Want to go through all the ideas here because you have such great historical experience around this market being a safe haven or flight to quality, which it hasn't been.
No.
If you've been a trader in the last, really, let's call it 3 to 5 years here, has not been a safe haven. Starting to look a little bit like it, but let's dive into all the dynamics here for the Japanese yen. As you can see, we have the daily chart up, and I also have Bank of Japan interest rates down there, which we'll take a look at in a second. But from the start, here's the start of the year, if you can see my mouse. And we started the year well above 155, and it's been a pretty consistent trend lower to just recently, the last couple of trading sessions, trading under 150. Pete, there's always a bunch of reasons for an event like this. I always talk about my theory for whenever you see a big move in the market, something that's not just like sideways noise of like, oh, it was up 100 points last week and now it's down 50 points and like we didn't really go anywhere.
Right.
But here, you have a move of 500 plus points over the last couple of weeks. It's always multiple things. It's never like, oh, that thing changed and so the market moved to a huge price extreme. What for you has been the main story in this yen market in 2025?
I think a little bit of the interest rate story. I think there is a little safe haven story in here. The inflation story. Their inflation numbers printed 4%.
They're moving higher.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing for Japan?
It is, because supposedly they were in this just protracted period of very, very low inflation. So they've got, again, interest rates at 50 basis points, and they've got 4% inflation. Now, we have 2.8% inflation. Pick a number. It's anywhere between 2.5 and 3, depending on the metric you pick. But our rates are closer to 4.5%. So a little bit of disconnect there. So I think we're seeing a little bit of that idea. Do we finally see the long-awaited normalization in rates. And I mean, we've seen them move in a very measured fashion.
Yeah. In
But
the right
think
direction.
about that. A measured fashion from 150 means a lot different than a measured fashion from if dollar yen were at 110.
Which we'll get to the historical
Yeah.
prices in a second,
So-
which is much more normal. And so, and to your point, a nice move higher in interest rates from negative
Right.
is a lot different than a nice move higher in interest rates from 0 or 25 bips or 50 bips, which is where most central banks started a few years ago. And I'm glad you brought in the inflation piece, because it is, for the sake of this conversation, inflation over the last couple of years is kind of synonymous with growth for a region. And if you remember, all along the pandemic recovery, U.S. inflation got up to 8-9%. Euro area and UK inflation got up to, I think, maybe 6-7%, whatever it was. But it also came along with great growth in U.S. business, UK business, European business, what have you. And you just didn't see that kind of recovery in Japan. You didn't see it in China and Australia, certain areas like that. Now you are seeing inflation higher than 2%, which is, of course, if you read an economics book, you don't want 4% inflation theoretically, but this is the first time Japanese inflation has been higher than that 2% measure that central banks are looking for in years. And it's been consistently up there, and they've been able to raise interest rates out of negative, but now to 50 bips, which even a handful of months ago, people didn't think that they would get up to 50 bips. And now the Bank of Japan is thinking about even more hikes, and that's why I think we've moved now below 150. But to your point, I do want to get the historical prices in here, Pete. Here's the monthly chart going all the way back to 1991. And you can see we are pretty much just coming off of the highest prices or the lowest prices for yen in the last 30 years. And so you have to take that context in there. But I do pose this question to you. Does it seem like that dollar yen carry trade might be over? Because in June of, I believe it was, 2024, last year, this market got up to 160. Okay, dollar yen. So for every dollar, you're getting 160 yen, which you have not been able to get that price point, like I say, in the last 30 years. When it was up there, the gap between U.S. and Japanese interest rates was 5.5%, 5.4%. Now it's 4%, still pretty wide gap. But if the U.S. is expected to come low, there's no expectation for the U.S. to go higher. They're expected to come lower. That pace of at which they come lower is maybe slower than we thought.
Lower. Where Japan is here or higher.
So does that carry trade feel like it? We had the story about a year or two ago where the market got down to close to 140 here, and everybody was like, the carry trade's over, the carry trade's over. The carry trade has stayed for the last year. Does it feel like we might finally be kind of closing that gap in that carry trade where people have been long dollar at 4 or 5% and short yen at 0% is starting to end a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's one of the contributing factors to it, and the economy in Japan is cooperating for a change in that divergence.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. I remember the levels we're at. So, I remember trading yen at 80, 81, and
double digits.
Still being long at 78, and those were painful days.
I'm sure. I mean, we spent years in the 2010s there below 90.
No, and this is where the Bank of Japan would just come in, and they would buy dollar yen and just in massive waves. They'd run the market. I remember and the minute they'd stop,
everybody would sell into it.
Everyone would just sell into it.
It was crazy.
That's when any time now a central bank intervenes, it's like, they draw an imaginary line in the sand until they let it go through. So I do think we're at a point where the rate of change is different in the two countries, and the rate of change is is seeming like it's more real to take place, and that will continue to put some stress on dollar yen right now.
The timing piece is the only piece that's still up for grabs. Will it get down to 3% or 2%, a gap between the two? this year,
Right.
or will it be, if it's next year, then this market might stay in that 140 to 160 range. But I do want to cover one last thing, because you did talk a little bit about the flight to quality. Here's the correlation, the rolling correlation of yen to VIX for the last, what do we got data for?
Well,
15 or so years. And you can see for stretches from 2012 until 2020, really up until that pandemic that kind of changed everything for the dynamic for trades like this, really strong positive correlation. That is, when the stock market would move lower, there would be a flight to quality and VIX would move higher, the yen would catch a bid as well. You see, since the pandemic, it's been on both sides. It's been actually red sometimes, green sometimes, not as strong. But in the most recent last couple of months here, you can see pretty consistently green. It's not the strongest it's ever been, but you're starting to see that flight to quality back in the market a little bit.
It'll be interesting. And again, the story was always that Japan, for many years, the largest holder of U.S. Treasuries, had investments around the globe. In times of stress, they will take those foreign assets, convert them back into domestic currency, and repatriate them home for protection, causing a natural updraft in yen or selling in dollar yen. It's a good story. How often it worked for a while.
Not so much recently, but we'll see if that relationship starts to get back.
I think this is really, and it was almost when you started to see SPOOs started to get hit early in the day and then continue and stuff like that. You always had some long yen on, and I want to say yen. We would, you'd see guys walk by the yen pit who hadn't been there in months, buy 20 yen. Just everybody was just putting that little bit of contra-cyclical hedge on.
Sure.
When did work well for you in the last 3-4 years?
Yeah, it's been more of an interest rate story recently, and that's what we've seen the last couple of weeks. We'll continue to watch that yen market and where these stories go. Thanks so much for watching here today. But stay tuned for Tom, Tony, and Vanetta coming up next. Peace.
Know someone who needs a better broker? For 1 month only, earn $500 for each qualified person you refer to tastytrade. See how it pays to have friends? Terms and conditions apply. tastytrade.
Shake it up, stop when the clock hits 13. Sing 1, 2, 3, 4. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
The beauty of Thinkorswim was that we were different.
From the name to the front end technology was clearly what we wanted as traders. Second time around, I think we did a better job. Yes, we are known for our ability to support complex derivatives traders, but we also have the tools for somebody who's brand new who wants to come in on the first floor and work their way up to the top of the building.
Come on, you know it, can you feel it?